Hey, Silent Pages fam. We're starting a new love journey. Tell us where you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe. Now stay with us. The story begins. The hum of servers was more than background noise. It was a constant reminder of the immense power contained within the walls of Vantage Data Center. Ella Hart adjusted her coat and clutched her notebook tighter. At 29, she had earned a reputation for uncovering hidden flaws in corporate systems. Yet the weight of the ethical dilemmas she had faced recently seemed heavier than any audit report or security breach she had ever investigated. Her bank account reflected the price of her scruples, and the offer from Max Vance felt like a lifeline she couldn't ignore. Max stood near a console, his posture relaxed but precise, his eyes fixed on the holographic screens displaying real-time analytics of the Aurora AI. He was every bit the calculated prodigy described in boardrooms and tech circles: cold, controlled, untouchable. But now, observing him in the soft glow of the high-tech environment, Ella detected subtle cues: the flicker of curiosity in his gaze, the almost imperceptible tension in his shoulders. "Ella Hart," Max began, his voice smooth and measured. "Your resume is impressive, but impressive credentials alone don't cut it here. Ethics matter. Integrity matters. You understand the consequences of exposure, don't you?" Ella nodded, forcing her voice steady. "I do. And I don't take offers lightly, Mr. Vance. You're asking me for access to sensitive systems, not just a seat at a conference table." Max tapped a few commands on his tablet, and a translucent holographic interface floated between them. The lines of code shimmered, each one symbolizing a layer of security and potential risk. "The board expects results for the upcoming investor summit," he said. "They've made it clear: success or exposure. You will receive working access to Aurora. Not admin privileges, not full control, but enough to contribute, enough to see the architecture." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "There's one condition." Ella held her breath. "A professional partnership," he continued. "Public appearances, rehearsed interactions. By the end of the summit, everyone will believe we are aligned." A chill ran down her spine. A fake relationship. A corporate charade. Her conscience pricked, but the alternative, walking away from funding and access to Aurora, was a luxury she could not afford. "And in return," she asked, her voice careful, neutral, "funding for your research, control over your subset of Aurora, and protection from competitors," Max replied. His tone was precise, almost clinical, yet there was an underlying current of personal interest. He wanted to see her succeed, or perhaps he simply wanted to test her. Ella glanced around the room. Servers stretched in endless rows, blinking with cool, rhythmic lights. The temperature was carefully controlled, sterile, yet humming with life. This was no ordinary office. It was a fortress of technology. Entering it meant more than walking into a workplace. It meant entering a world of surveillance, scrutiny, and power plays. "I'll do it," she said finally, her voice firmer than she felt. "But I follow my ethical code as strictly as the code itself. I won't compromise that." Max's lips curved into the faintest smile, almost imperceptible. "That's why I chose you." He tapped the tablet again, and a single line of encrypted code appeared, glowing softly in the holographic projection. "This," he said, "is the first step. Welcome aboard, Ella. Let's see if you're the variable I hope you are." Ella hesitated, her finger hovering over the projection. Her mind raced. This partnership could elevate her career or destroy it. She could detect the hidden variables in systems, but people? Their motives were far more unpredictable. "You know," she said carefully, "I've worked with many AI systems before, but I've never met one that seemed alive in its intent. Aurora feels different." Max's eyes flickered with interest. "Aurora isn't just code. It learns, it adapts, and it will test both of us in ways we cannot anticipate." A moment of silence stretched between them. Then Max leaned slightly closer, lowering his voice. "And if you fail, the exposure isn't just yours. It's mine too." Ella's heart skipped. It wasn't a threat. It was a subtle acknowledgement of mutual risk. For a brief moment, she saw him not as an untouchable CEO prodigy, but as a man bound by expectations, pressured by the board, forced to navigate ethics and ambition simultaneously. As she touched the glowing line of code, a surge of electricity, or maybe anticipation, ran through her. This was more than a professional decision. It was a moral and emotional gamble, one that would test her limits in ways she couldn't yet foresee. Max observed her reaction with quiet satisfaction. "You understand what's at stake. Not just your career, but trust, integrity, and perhaps more," he said. The faintest trace of a smile lingered, almost imperceptible. Ella exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of her choice. She had agreed to enter a partnership that was part opportunity, part corporate theater, part ethical minefield. And somewhere beneath the spreadsheets, the code, and the calculated smiles, she sensed the first hints of a tension she wasn't ready to define, but that already made her pulse quicken. The servers hummed on, indifferent to the human complexities unfolding in their glow. But inside the data center, two individuals had stepped into a delicate equation of trust, ambition, and curiosity, one that would ripple far beyond the cold, controlled walls of the facility. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, revealing a world of sleek lines, mirrored walls, and a polished sheen that reflected every movement in perfect symmetry. Ella stepped out, her heels clicking against the marble floor of Max Vance's penthouse. The space was minimalistic yet unmistakably luxurious, walls adorned with abstract digital art, furniture that seemed sculpted from a single piece of metal and leather, and floor-to-ceiling windows that displayed the city below like a living circuit board. Max followed her in silence, his expression unreadable, but his eyes assessed her in subtle, precise movements. Every step she took, every glance, seemed measured in his mind, as if he were evaluating her adaptability as much as her appearance. "Tonight," he began, his voice calm but commanding, "we are not just appearing at an event. We are performing a role. Investors, media, the board, they will scrutinize everything. Posture, tone, eye contact, subtle gestures. Your body language must reflect confidence, your demeanor, alignment with me." Ella swallowed, her nerves tingling. Corporate theater was a world she knew in theory, but living it, rehearsing it in the intimate space of Max's home, was entirely different. "So, I'm a mirror?" she asked, trying to lighten the tension. "More than a mirror," he corrected. "You are the reflection of competence, composure, and trust. It must be convincing. Mistakes will be noticed." He gestured toward a holographic projection of their evening, a simulated gala with avatars representing investors and board members. "Observe their reactions. Learn to anticipate questions. Respond without hesitation." Ella nodded, trying to memorize the subtle tilt of his head, the way his shoulders relaxed, the precision of his smile. It was more than etiquette, it was a language, a code she had to decipher quickly. As they practiced, Max corrected her stance, lightly guiding her hand, adjusting the tilt of her chin, and demonstrating the subtle intimacy required for appearances without revealing real emotion. Hours passed with meticulous repetition, each movement choreographed, each phrase rehearsed. Between instructions, they occasionally paused, letting the city lights reflect off the polished floor. In those quiet moments, Ella noticed details she hadn't before. The slight tension in Max's jaw, the way he avoided prolonged eye contact when distracted, and the rare flicker of amusement when she made a calculated misstep. Finally, they reached the final exercise, the celebratory toast at the gala. Max handed her a flute of champagne, his fingers brushing hers just slightly longer than necessary. Ella's pulse quickened. She lifted the glass, mirrored his posture, and felt a strange, unfamiliar thrill at the simple act. "Perfect," he said, his voice softer than before. Now the finale. The finale was a brief, scripted kiss, meant to appear natural for the cameras at the gala. They approached, eyes locking briefly, a mixture of instruction and instinct guiding their movements. The contact was fleeting, professional in intention, but the electric tension between them was undeniable. Ella pulled back, her breath caught, realizing for the first time that their rehearsed intimacy had awakened something unplanned. Breaking the moment, she pulled away and muttered, "That was not just acting." Max allowed a faint smirk. "All behavior has consequences, Ella. You learn faster when there is risk." As the night deepened, they moved to his private office. While Ella reviewed the simulated responses for the gala, her eyes caught a series of flagged emails and reports on the holographic display. Her stomach tightened. There were early test results and security assessments regarding Aurora, many of which had been dismissed or hidden. The urgency in them indicated that Max's father, the chairman, was pushing the release despite unresolved safety concerns. A moral conflict gnawed at her. She had been willing to engage in a professional charade for opportunity, but the ethical implications of Aurora's deployment were far beyond personal gain. Max, oblivious to her scrutiny, continued teaching her subtle gestures, demonstrating how a tilt of her head or a gentle hand placement could convey trustworthiness without disclosing private thoughts. Ella realized that this intimate simulation was a test on multiple levels, not just of her poise, but of her perception, her judgment, and perhaps even her loyalty. The line between performance and reality blurred further with each shared glance and controlled movement. The night ended with a silent acknowledgement. Both aware of the unspoken tension, the professional boundaries tested, and the ethical storm brewing just beyond the walls of the penthouse. Ella left the office with a new understanding. Mastering the facade was only the beginning. Deciphering the true intentions behind Aurora and the family that controlled it would demand far more than rehearsed smiles and polished gestures. The gala hall was a cathedral of light and ambition. Crystal chandeliers reflected in mirrored panels, cascading down onto polished marble floors where the city's elite moved like orchestrated pieces on a chessboard. Guests in tailored suits and designer gowns whispered, smiled, and exchanged business cards as if the entire future of investment depended on the subtle inflection of a voice or the fleeting grip of a hand. Ella's heart pounded, a mixture of adrenaline and awe. This was not just a corporate event. It was a battlefield dressed as a celebration. She had rehearsed her every step, every gesture, every expression with Max for weeks, but nothing could fully prepare her for the intensity of the live environment. She adjusted the hem of her dress, exhaled, and let Max guide her into the center of the crowd. "Remember," he murmured, his voice low, "all eyes will be on us. Show confidence. Project competence. Never hesitate." Ella nodded, forcing herself to focus. She followed Max's lead, noticing the subtle signals he sent to allies and rivals alike. A nod here, a glance there, a slight hand gesture that conveyed understanding, trust, or warning. Every detail mattered. Midway through the evening, as they navigated through clusters of investors and board members, Ella overheard a fragment of conversation near the champagne table. Two senior engineers, voices hushed but tense, were discussing Aurora's upcoming release. "We can't let anyone see the flagged vulnerabilities," one whispered, glancing nervously toward the crowd. "If this leaks, the board will pull the launch. The chairman won't accept delays." Ella's stomach tightened. A hidden bug? Manipulation of data? Her pulse quickened, and she subtly shifted closer, pretending to adjust her glass while straining to catch more. "They think they can hide the reports," the second engineer continued. "Financial manipulation, user data integrity, it's all buried. If Max finds out, we're done." A chill ran down Ella's spine. The playful rehearsal of intimacy and corporate poise suddenly collided with a chilling reality. The system they were celebrating could be dangerously compromised, and she was now aware of it. Before she could process further, Max intercepted a conversation with an investor attempting to undermine her presence. His tone was firm but smooth, effortlessly redirecting the discussion while subtly positioning Ella as a key partner in the project. Every gesture, his hand lightly brushing her arm in a protective, yet professional manner, sent a clear signal. She was not only his chosen collaborator, but also under his personal watch. Later, they retreated momentarily to a quieter corner, where the city lights flickered across glass walls. Ella's mind raced. She wanted to confront Max immediately about what she had overheard, but she understood the risk. Revealing the bug prematurely could compromise her credibility, and more importantly, it could escalate the tension before she fully understood the situation. Max, sensing her distraction, gave a rare, quick smile. "Focus," he said softly. "Tonight is about positioning. Tomorrow, we deal with everything else." The lesson was clear. In this high-stakes world, perception was as critical as reality. Ella realized that navigating the gala successfully required more than elegance or charm. It demanded acute awareness, strategic thinking, and the ability to adapt under pressure. As the night ended, she left with an uneasy sense of responsibility. The gala had been a simulation in real time, a live test of loyalty, composure, and observation. And she had already discovered a fracture in the system, a hidden flaw that could ripple through the company, potentially putting Max in danger and testing her own ethical boundaries. Her mind lingered on the whispered words, the hidden bug, and the growing weight of knowledge. The game had begun, and Ella knew she could no longer be just a performer. She had to be a player. The night had fallen over the city, blanketing the skyline in a soft haze of lights. The hum of servers from Max's penthouse filled the space, a constant, reassuring background to the task at hand. Ella had been invited to assist him with a last-minute presentation on Aurora's capabilities for an influential tech summit. It was supposed to be a professional session, one more rehearsal, but tonight, it became something more intimate, more revealing. Max led her into his private study, walls lined with screens, glowing softly in the dim light. The central console displayed the intricate architecture of Aurora's AI algorithms, lines of code cascading like streams of neon, nested functions, and interwoven modules that spoke of precision, power, and control. "Here," Max said, gesturing to a complex segment. "This module determines decision-making thresholds. It's sensitive. One small miscalculation, and the results could cascade unpredictably." Ella leaned over the console, her fingers hovering above the keyboard, feeling the pulse of the machine. "It's beautiful," she said quietly, "like a living organism. Every line matters." Max looked at her, a rare softness in his eyes. "You understand more than you let on. Most people see only the surface." Their hands brushed as he adjusted her position to get a better view of the code. The contact was brief, professional, but the electricity between them was undeniable. Ella felt a thrill, an unspoken tension that neither dared address. Yet, as they worked together, the barriers between them began to dissolve. For hours, they dissected every function, cross-checked variables, and simulated outcomes. The glow of the screens painted their faces in shifting hues of green and blue. As they paused to sip lukewarm coffee, Max finally spoke about what had been weighing on him for weeks. "My father, he wants Aurora launched before it's ready. He's ignoring reports about potential flaws, warnings from engineers. The board pressures me, too. But I can't compromise on safety," he admitted, his voice low and unguarded. Ella listened intently, sensing the vulnerability beneath his controlled exterior. "That's a heavy burden," she said softly. "You're trying to do the right thing in a room full of people who care more about appearances than ethics." Max's gaze lingered on her. "And you make it seem simpler. Somehow, just by being here, you make this burden lighter." The room seemed to shrink around them, the hum of machines fading into the background. Their collaboration over code became a metaphor for trust, connection, and intimacy. Each algorithm they debugged, each line of code they optimized, mirrored the tentative steps they were taking toward one another. At some point, their hands met over a particularly tricky function. Neither moved away. The heat of proximity, the shared concentration, and the quiet hum of Aurora's processing enveloped them. A subtle, professional kiss, a touch of lips meant to celebrate a breakthrough, lingered longer than intended. It carried with it curiosity, desire, and something unspoken that neither fully acknowledged. They broke apart, laughing nervously, the tension diffusing but not disappearing. "We make a good team," Ella said, her voice tinged with warmth. Max smiled, leaning back slightly. "More than I expected." He hesitated, then added, "I've never trusted anyone with this level of access before. Not just to the code, to myself. But I trust you." Ella's heart raced. She had expected professional boundaries, rehearsed roles, and careful restraint. Instead, she found herself navigating uncharted territory, emotional, ethical, and deeply personal. As the night deepened, they continued working, but conversation drifted beyond Aurora's architecture. They debated the ethics of AI, the responsibilities of creators, and the dangers of unchecked ambition. Each shared thought, each carefully considered opinion, drew them closer. Trust, respect, and attraction intertwined seamlessly, forming a connection neither could ignore. By the time they finally leaned back, exhausted, the first hints of dawn were brushing against the skyline. Max turned to her, a quiet intensity in his eyes. "Tonight, you've proven more than skill. You've proven integrity. And, I suppose, courage." Ella met his gaze, understanding that their professional alliance had shifted into something far more complicated, far more real. In the glow of Aurora's screens, amid lines of code and ethical debates, the boundaries between work and heart had blurred. And as they finally shut down the main console, the room fell silent, leaving only the echo of machines and the unspoken promise of a connection neither of them could, or wanted to, ignore. Ella sat at her workstation long after the office lights had dimmed, her eyes scanning lines of code and reports she had pulled together over the past few days. The room was silent except for the soft hum of the servers around her, a rhythmic reminder that she was alone in a game much larger than herself. She had been digging deeper into the Aura project, following small inconsistencies, subtle anomalies in the system's behavior, things that didn't add up in the official documentation. Every line she read heightened a creeping unease that had been growing inside her since the gala. It was in the middle of a seemingly routine audit of system logs that she stumbled upon it. A hidden module buried deep in the software architecture, obfuscated and deliberately mislabeled. Her pulse quickened as she decrypted the first few functions. The code wasn't just sophisticated, it was manipulative. It monitored market trends, user transactions, and financial indicators, and, astonishingly, it could subtly influence outcomes to favor certain investors. Her stomach churned. This wasn't a bug or a flaw. This was a deliberate, unethical manipulation. Her mind raced, and the room seemed to close in around her. Could Max really be unaware of this? She scrolled further, and every line she uncovered painted a damning picture. The structure, the logic, the intentional triggers, they all pointed not to him, but to someone higher up. Her gaze shifted to a report file, timestamped weeks ago. The metadata revealed the true architect of this code, Max's father, the chairman of the board, with technical execution likely aided by the company's lead engineers. Ella leaned back, running a hand through her hair, feeling the weight of the discovery pressing down on her. She thought of Max, of the evenings they had spent analyzing code together, of the subtle sparks of connection that had started to feel genuine. Was he a participant, an unwitting pawn, or something in between? Every instinct told her he was innocent, that his ethical compass was intact. But how could she be sure without exposing the truth? And if she went public, it could destroy everything he had worked for, his reputation, and perhaps even their fragile, budding relationship. The moral dilemma clawed at her. She knew the regulatory implications. This wasn't just corporate negligence. It bordered on fraud. If left unchecked, the consequences could ripple through markets, affecting thousands, maybe millions. Her own career and integrity were at stake. Reporting anonymously was possible, but the act alone carried enormous risk. Someone powerful would find the leak, and she could be held accountable. Hours passed like minutes as she documented her findings, capturing screenshots, annotating suspicious segments, creating a timeline of code changes and responsible parties. She imagined Max walking in at any moment, asking how the project was progressing, and she felt a pang of guilt. She had entered this agreement with a mixture of opportunism and curiosity, yet now the stakes were personal, emotional, and terrifyingly real. Her hand hovered over the keyboard as she drafted an encrypted note to herself, outlining the truth in painstaking detail. Part of her wanted to run to Max immediately, confess everything, and beg him to trust her judgment. But another part, the part that understood the fragility of trust, urged patience, caution. One wrong word, one ill-timed revelation, and the fragile alliance they had built could collapse entirely. For the first time, Ella realized that this mission had become more than a professional challenge. It was a crucible testing her morality, courage, and capacity for love. She was no longer just a coder or a temporary partner in a corporate masquerade. She was a guardian of truth, holding in her hands evidence that could topple empires or ruin the one person she had started to care about most. And somewhere deep down, she understood that the hardest choice wasn't exposing the wrongdoing. It was deciding whether she could confront it without betraying Max, the only person who had shown her kindness, respect, and the spark of something real in a world that demanded performance over humanity. Her fingers shook slightly as she saved her notes and backed up the files. She knew tomorrow would demand decisions she wasn't ready to make. But tonight, at least, she had the truth. And for the first time, the line between professional obligation and personal loyalty blurred in ways that left her heart racing, mind spinning, and soul torn in two. The tension between them had been simmering for days, unspoken yet palpable. Max paced his penthouse living room, the city lights sprawling behind him like a glittering, indifferent audience. He could feel it. Ella was hiding something, a fragment of the truth that gnawed at him from the edges of their fragile partnership. Every glance she shot him, every carefully measured word, seemed to carry secrets she wasn't ready to share. Finally, he stopped pacing and turned to face her. No phones, no work, no distractions, he said, his tone firm but quiet, carrying the weight of unspoken urgency. Tonight is for us. Just us. Ella hesitated, caught between relief and anxiety. The request should have been simple, but in their world, simplicity was a luxury neither of them could afford. She nodded, placing her laptop aside and sliding the files she had been obsessing over into a drawer. She didn't dare speak yet. The truth about the code and the manipulative functions of the Aura project still burned at her fingertips, but the timing, she knew, was wrong. Max led her to the balcony, where a private table had been set with minimalist elegance, 2 glasses of deep red wine, a small plate of carefully arranged hors d'oeuvres, and nothing else. The hum of the city below seemed distant here, almost irrelevant. He poured them each a glass, his eyes never leaving hers. You know, he began, finally breaking the silence. I don't like surprises. I like control. I like knowing the outcome before it happens. But with you, you're unpredictable. You challenge me. His voice faltered, caught on the edge of confession. You're my only unpredictable element, Ella, and it terrifies me. Her heart skipped. She had anticipated many things in their arrangement: professional tension, awkward rehearsals, the occasional spark of attraction, but she hadn't expected this vulnerability. The walls around him, so meticulously built over years of corporate expectations, seemed to crack in the soft glow of the balcony lights. Ella wanted to respond, to spill everything about the code she had discovered, to tell him about the hidden manipulations and the dangerous path set by his father. She wanted to warn him, to make him see that she hadn't deceived him maliciously, but that revealing it now could destroy the trust she had spent weeks nurturing. Instead, she smiled faintly and reached into her bag. From it, she retrieved a small USB drive, sleek and nondescript, and handed it to him. "For you," she said, her voice calm but layered with meaning. "It's something to think about. Just some notes, suggestions about the system. About truth." Max took it, weighing it in his hand like it contained a treasure or a threat. His brow furrowed. "Truth, huh?" he murmured. "And you're keeping some of it from me?" Her throat tightened, and she shook her head. "Not keeping, just timing. Timing is everything." For a long moment, neither spoke. The city skyline stretched endlessly before them, and in that suspended time, they both wrestled with the invisible lines that separated duty from desire, secrecy from honesty. Max finally set down his glass and stepped closer, his presence a grounding force that made her pulse race. "I can feel it, Ella," he said, his hand brushing against hers. "Something's happening. Something you're not telling me. I need to know I can trust you." She met his gaze, torn. Her fingers twitched, almost reaching for the truth, almost ready to confess. But she stopped, seeing the vulnerability in his eyes and knowing that this revelation, this confession, required more than a moment of courage. It required proof, timing, and certainty. She couldn't risk their fragile connection with half-truths. Instead, she leaned in slightly, letting the closeness speak volumes she couldn't yet articulate with words. "I'm working on it," she whispered. "You'll know soon enough. I promise." Max's expression softened, though the concern didn't leave his eyes. "Soon enough?" he repeated, almost teasingly, yet there was a tremor of sincerity beneath the words. "I suppose I'll have to trust that. But know this, whatever it is, you don't have to face it alone." Ella felt a swell of conflicting emotions, gratitude, relief, fear, and something tender she couldn't name. The night stretched on, and they talked, quietly, carefully, about everything but the forbidden code, about ethics and technology, about how the world demanded compromise, but sometimes reward lay in resisting the easy path. Every word, every pause, every glance built layers of trust that neither fully acknowledged, but both deeply felt. As the night came to a close, and the first hints of dawn touched the horizon, Max finally took her hand, holding it firmly. "Whatever comes next," he said softly, "we face it together. But you have to let me in. That's the only way I can help." Ella nodded, hiding the USB in her palm, feeling its weight like the weight of the choice she had yet to make. For now, the night belonged to them, a fragile bubble of truth, secrecy, and unspoken connection. The storm of decisions and revelations still loomed, but for these few hours, they had each other, and for Ella, that was a small, precious victory. Max had always prided himself on control. Control over his company, over his team, over his environment. But nothing had prepared him for the feeling of betrayal that struck when he stumbled across the hidden files on Ella's laptop. It was an accidental discovery. He had gone to retrieve a report she had promised to finish, and there it was, a folder labeled Vulnerability Analysis, Unauthorized Access. At first, he thought it was a mistake, a misplaced document. But as he opened it, the carefully detailed notes, code snippets, and time-stamped observations revealed the truth. Ella had been probing the Aura project in ways that went far beyond their business agreement. The more he read, the more his world seemed to fracture. She hadn't just been curious. She had been deliberately seeking weaknesses in his system. Every calculated step, every seemingly innocent question, suddenly appeared as part of a premeditated strategy. His mind raced. Corporate espionage, insider sabotage. Every warning his father had ever given him about trust and loyalty in the tech world echoed with terrifying clarity. He stormed to her penthouse office, where she was reviewing the night's simulation data. The moment he entered, his eyes locked onto hers, and the look on his face silenced her before she could speak. "What is this?" Max demanded, voice sharp, betraying the storm of emotions he had been holding back. "Explain this right now." Ella's heart dropped. She knew the moment she had feared most had arrived. "Max, it's not what it looks like," she began, her voice steady despite the panic clawing at her chest. "I wasn't trying to sabotage the project. I found a vulnerability, a potential risk, and I was documenting it, not for myself, but to protect you. Protect Aura." Max laughed, bitter, hollow, shaking his head. "Protect me? Protect Aura?" He slammed the folder onto the table, scattering papers. "Ella, you were probing my system without permission. You were snooping, stealing information. How is that protection?" "I had no malicious intent," she pleaded, stepping closer, trying to bridge the widening chasm. "I've been honest in everything else." "You've been honest?" Max interrupted, voice rising. "You've been lying from the start. All those moments, all that closeness, it was just part of your plan, wasn't it? You were a spy, a corporate infiltrator. The words hit her like a physical blow. She had known the risk of discovery was high, but hearing them articulated so cruelly was almost unbearable. No, Max. I didn't. You did, he shouted, cutting her off. His normally controlled demeanor shattered, replaced by a tempest of betrayal and fury. You manipulated me, you manipulated the team, the investors, you were nothing but a bug in my system, an unexpected error I should have deleted before it caused damage. Ella's eyes filled with tears, not from fear, but from the heartbreak of being so utterly misunderstood. Max, I found the vulnerability to protect the project. To protect you. The flaw isn't you. It's your father, his rush to release the AI without proper safety checks. Max turned away, pacing now, unable to reconcile the girl he trusted with the figure she had become in his eyes. I don't care about his flaws right now. You violated my trust. That's all I see. Everything else, irrelevant. For a long, agonizing moment, silence filled the room, broken only by the hum of the servers and the distant lights of the city. Ella's chest ached with every beat, knowing that her intentions, however noble, could not reach him through the wall of anger and betrayal. Max, please, she whispered finally, voice barely audible. I'm on your side. Always. You have to believe that. He froze, the words hanging in the air, but his back remained to her. I don't know if I can, he admitted, voice thick with pain. You were my partner in everything. And now, I don't even know who you are anymore. Ella sank into the chair, feeling the weight of the night crush her. The emotional and professional worlds she had tried so desperately to balance had collided violently, leaving fragments of trust scattered across the floor. She had to decide, back down, stay silent, or fight for him. And the truth. Max finally turned, his face pale, eyes glinting with a mixture of sorrow and anger. For now, he said quietly, almost to himself, you are just a bug in the system. A beautiful, dangerous bug, but a bug nonetheless. And bugs get removed. The words pierced her, sharper than any corporate threat could ever be. Ella knew this was only the beginning of their true test, one that would demand courage, clarity, and unwavering conviction. Tonight had broken them, but it also, in a twisted way, laid bare what they truly had to fight for: trust, truth, and each other. After the confrontation, the penthouse felt colder than ever. Max avoided Ella, moving through the day with mechanical precision, attending board meetings, investor calls, and press briefings, all while carrying the invisible weight of betrayal. He presented a composed, unflappable facade to the world, but inside, anger and disappointment tangled with a lingering, reluctant care he couldn't ignore. Ella, meanwhile, retreated into her work, but not quietly. Every morning, she arrived before anyone else, her laptop open, eyes scanning lines of code, financial reports, and system logs. She had made a choice. If Max could not see the truth, she would reveal it to the world, anonymously, safely, and effectively. The flaw in Aura's release schedule was too dangerous to ignore, and now, it was no longer about her personal feelings. It was about preventing a disaster. She dug deeper into the system, tracing access logs, encrypted files, and internal communications. The more she uncovered, the more alarming the picture became. Every shortcut, every bypass implemented by Max's father, revealed a deliberate neglect of security protocols. It was clear that if the software went live unmodified, the consequences could be catastrophic, not just for investors, but for every user depending on Aura. Late at night, in the dim glow of her monitors, Ella drafted a plan. She would release the findings in a controlled, anonymous leak just before the investor summit. She coded carefully, leaving no trace of her identity, only irrefutable proof that the system contained high-risk vulnerabilities deliberately ignored by the leadership. It was dangerous. If discovered, she could face legal action, corporate blacklisting, or even criminal charges, but she refused to compromise her principles. Meanwhile, Max felt the absence of Ella like a physical wound. He had tried to protect himself emotionally, believing that distance and control were the answer. But every press release, every tech article about Aura, every investor's question kept reminding him of her influence. She was everywhere and nowhere at once, a ghost haunting the very project he had built. When the summit approached, the tension escalated. Max found himself forced to present Aura as flawless, a shining example of technological brilliance. Behind closed doors, he struggled with the gnawing suspicion that something was amiss, that the system he trusted blindly might not be as secure as he believed. His heart wrestled with logic, public support for the AI versus the suspicion that Ella's warnings were true. Then, moments before the summit's opening session, the anonymous leak appeared. Screens across the financial world lit up with undeniable evidence of the vulnerability. Files, test reports, internal messages, all pointing to deliberate negligence by Max's father. The story spread instantly, igniting a storm of investor concern, media frenzy, and regulatory scrutiny. Max felt his world tilt. Every carefully constructed narrative, every polished slide, every investor assurance was suddenly undermined. And yet, despite the chaos, despite the embarrassment and fury, he recognized the brilliance of what Ella had done. She had acted ethically, courageously, and decisively, even at the risk of her own freedom. In the chaos of the summit, Max's anger toward Ella fought with a reluctant admiration. He could not forgive yet, not fully, but a part of him knew she had saved him, saved Aura, and perhaps saved himself from a future built on compromised principles. He realized, painfully, that trust, once broken, required more than logic. It demanded time, understanding, and proof of unwavering integrity. Ella watched the summit unfold from a hidden cafe across town, monitors open, fingers poised over the keyboard in case she needed to defend herself or her leak. She felt a mix of triumph and despair. She had exposed the truth, but Max was still in the middle of it, still seeing her actions as a betrayal. Her heart ached, but she refused to retreat. This was not just about love. It was about justice, ethics, and the future of the technology they had both fought for. As the day ended and the press storm began to settle, Max finally stepped away from the boardroom, alone, staring out over the city. He knew the battle wasn't over. Ella had challenged him, exposed flaws he had never considered, and shattered his trust. But he also knew that if she could act so boldly for the right reasons, maybe, just maybe, she was the one person capable of helping him navigate the moral complexity of Aura. For now, they were apart, each grappling with their choices, the lines between betrayal and duty blurred, and the coming confrontation promised to test the limits of trust, ethics, and their hearts. The day of the investor summit arrived, and the city skyline gleamed beneath a cold winter sun. The conference hall buzzed with anticipation, investors, journalists, and executives milling about, unaware of the storm about to break. Ella arrived early, dressed in her professional best, her laptop bag heavy with encrypted files and evidence of the ethical disaster lurking inside Aura's code. Every step toward the hall felt like crossing a battlefield. Every glance at the tech displays reminded her that the wrong move could cost her career, or worse. Inside the summit, Max moved with practiced precision. The public version of Aura's presentation was flawless, polished, and inspiring. Investors applauded, media cameras clicked, and board members nodded. Yet behind his composed exterior, Max's mind raced. The leak Ella had released yesterday had shaken the industry, and he had spent the night combing through logs, emails, and AI code to verify the claims. The signs were undeniable. The vulnerability existed, but it was not his doing. It was orchestrated by his father and the technical director, who had ignored ethical warnings for personal gain. Ella's heart pounded as she navigated backstage. Security checks, conference staff, and the constant hum of technology made her hyper-aware of every movement. She could feel the tension in the air. The summit would be her only chance to expose the truth to the world, but she had to do it carefully. One wrong step, and the evidence could be dismissed as hacktivism, or worse, the blame shifted to her entirely. Suddenly, the real threat made itself visible. Max's father, a powerful and imposing figure, slipped behind the stage with the technical director, attempting to intercept Ella before she could connect her encrypted files to the central display. Their goal was clear: suppress the evidence and maintain the illusion of a perfect AI launch. Ella's pulse quickened, fingers hovering over the USB drive, mind calculating the risk. Before she could act, Max appeared. He had traced his father's movements and uncovered the final proof needed to clear both Aura and Ella. Using his access to the AI's core system, he intervened in real time, projecting critical data on the main screens of the summit. Graphs, logs, and encrypted communication streams revealed the truth. The security flaws, ignored warnings, and deliberate manipulations were orchestrated by the executives, not Ella or Max. The audience gasped. Investors leaned forward, journalists whispered into microphones, and Max's father froze, realizing the magnitude of his exposure. Every attempt to explain away the evidence crumbled under the weight of undeniable facts displayed in full clarity. Max, standing beside Ella now, raised his voice so all could hear. This is the reality behind Aura. The integrity of our technology cannot be compromised, and no one, not even family, will be allowed to override ethics for personal gain. The vulnerabilities you see were concealed deliberately. The AI itself is not the problem. It's the human oversight that failed. Ella exhaled, a mixture of relief and exhilaration washing over her. The danger wasn't fully over. Corporate backlash and legal consequences would follow, but the immediate threat was neutralized. Max's intervention had not only protected her, but had also demonstrated his commitment to ethics, to truth, and to the principles they had both fought to uphold. After the presentation, reporters swarmed them, questions flying from every angle. Max and Ella moved as a unit, answering carefully, presenting Aura's corrected roadmap, and reinforcing the ethical reforms they intended to implement. Max's father was escorted out, his power diminished in the public eye, and the technical director faced immediate suspension pending investigation. Backstage, away from cameras and microphones, Max finally allowed himself a quiet glance at Ella. She met his eyes, their shared exhaustion and triumph forming an unspoken bond stronger than any boardroom handshake or investor agreement. Words weren't necessary. Their actions had spoken louder than any speech. For the first time, Max realized that trust could be rebuilt, not by promises, but through courage, integrity, and the willingness to act when it mattered most. As the summit concluded and the crowd dispersed, Max and Ella stepped into the crisp evening air together. The city lights reflected in their eyes, not just as witnesses to a corporate victory, but as symbols of a personal one. The battle for Aura's integrity had been won, and though the path ahead would require careful navigation, they now faced it side by side, united by truth, ethics, and a growing, undeniable connection. The weeks following the investor summit felt surreal. Aura had survived scrutiny, Max's father was facing a public investigation, and the AI community buzzed with debates about ethics, accountability, and the future of intelligent systems. Amid the chaos, Max and Ella found a fragile calm, a moment to process everything that had happened and the choices that had brought them here. Max invited Ella to his office, not the cold, polished corporate space she had first met him in, but a newly redesigned area filled with natural light, minimalistic design, and clear sight lines. The environment reflected a fresh start. No hidden corners, no shadows to obscure truth. Ella noticed the subtle changes, plants carefully positioned for warmth, soft lighting replacing the harsh fluorescence, and a sense of openness that mirrored the honesty now between them. Max's eyes met hers across the desk. There was no business agenda today, no boardroom negotiations, only two people who had risked everything and survived. Ella, he began, his voice steady but tinged with vulnerability. I need to admit something. All this time, my fear of being deceived, of trusting the wrong person, was stronger than anything else. I let that fear control me, and I hurt you because of it. Ella's breath caught. She had expected many things after the summit, but this raw admission, stripped of corporate formalities, struck deeper than any contract or encrypted file could. I was wrong, Max continued, stepping closer. You weren't a threat. You were the truth I needed, the integrity I couldn't see because I was blinded by doubt. You're not just my partner in this project, you're my ethical code. The one principle I can't compromise, the one truth I won't ignore. Tears welled in Ella's eyes, a mixture of relief, joy, and exhaustion. For weeks, she had carried the burden of exposing the flaws, protecting Max, and balancing her feelings against professional ethics. Now, standing here, she realized that their shared struggle had created a bond stronger than any agreement or pretense. She smiled softly, reaching for his hand. And you're my anchor, Max. You reminded me that even in the most complex systems, there's always a human element, something worth protecting, something worth trusting. The air between them seemed to shift, charged not with tension, but with promise. Slowly, deliberately, Max closed the distance, and their first truly unguarded kiss sealed not just affection, but partnership, mutual respect, and the start of a new chapter. In the weeks that followed, Max and Ella officially launched Aura 2.0, a reimagined AI platform emphasizing transparency, safety, and ethical design. They worked side by side in a modern, open-plan office that reflected their shared values. No hidden corners, no shortcuts, just clean lines, bright spaces, and a commitment to doing things right. Investors were cautiously optimistic, impressed by the turnaround and the moral backbone now guiding the project. Evenings, once filled with secrecy and suspicion, became opportunities for collaboration and shared dreams. They brainstormed features, reviewed code, and debated ethical protocols, but always with laughter, respect, and the occasional playful nudge. The AI, once a source of tension and potential ruin, became a symbol of their teamwork and trust. One crisp evening, As the city lights twinkled below their office, Max turned to Ella and said softly, "No contracts, no agendas. Just us. And this, what we've built together. That's my priority." Ella nodded, her hand finding his once more. "Mine too." Outside, the city pulsed with life, unaware of the quiet revolution happening in that minimalist office. Inside, two people who had navigated deceit, corporate power, and ethical dilemmas now faced the future together, partners, equals, and, finally, free to live and work in a world where trust was not optional, but essential. The reboot was complete, not just for Aura, but for them. Thank you for listening to the story. Write your thoughts in the comments.